Greetings, my magnificent ones. Sue Paulson here, your magnificence mentor. Today, I want to do part one of what I think is going to be a two-part series called Me and My Shadow. I came across an offering to have a closer look at shadow work. And as I've been delving into that whole concept of it, I'm I came to realize that there are really two distinct parts to shadow work. There's looking at what's not working and where that might have come from in your life. And then, of course, there's looking at the side where everything's working or all the good things that are working show up or maybe have yet to be revealed. So let's start with the movie Peter Pan. Remember, I'm thinking of the one with Robin Williams in it and Julia Roberts. And Tink is trying to get Peter Pan to fly. And he's so grounded and he can't seem to get off the ground, or he gets a little ways and then falls flat. And she encourages him and she said, think of your happy place. Go to your happy place. Well, he thinks about it and thinks about it, and then a good memory flashes into his head. And all of a sudden, he feels euphoric and happy, and he starts to rise. And the more of this happiness that floods his very being, the lighter and lighter he gets. Enlightenment, right? And the more success he has. And then he literally starts to fly. Well, of course, the second that an image that's less than happy shows up, down he starts to come. Well, it's a beautiful illustration of really what does go on inside us as humans, in that when we feel happy about something, whether it's an achievement, a success, a good connection with someone else, the a great cup of coffee or a lovely brewed cup of tea, doesn't matter what it is that fills us, it does lift us up. We feel lighter as a result. So I got thinking of shadow work. Now, in the self-improvement, personal growth arena today, there are thousands upon thousands of books that are there to help you improve yourself. Well, if you would only just adopt this one habit or take on this one task or rid yourself of whatever's wrong with you or wherever you've come from. Now, there's no doubt that being human, we face a lot of things in our lives, everything from extreme joy to extreme adversity, from huge tragedy to tremendous joys, and everything in between. There's no question of that. What we need to think about, though, is, I guess I would call it a balance in there, in saying, well, am I a little too far over onto one side than another? And right now, I think we're a little too focused on what's wrong with us or what somebody else tells us is wrong with us. Oh, well, if you could only overcome that, you'd be away to the races. Okay. Well, I've certainly found in my life that as I've tackled various things about me that were less than effective and had some success, well, yeah, I felt better. I felt lighter. Things were better. But I also am aware of the fact that every time I began to acknowledge and pay attention to what was right with me, that gave me lots to work with, and perhaps even more so than anything that I found was painful or I didn't like about myself or whatever. So that's what I want to talk about today, is what's lurking in the shadow that's great about you, that's wonderful about you. I've told this story before and I'm going to tell it again because I think it bears repeating. I was challenged one time with writing down 100 things that I liked about myself. It was a laborious process and very hard to do because I had not been brought up that way. I had been brought up that, you don't toot your own horn, you don't think you're that good because of course it was presupposed that if you thought you were all that, then it meant that you thought you were better than someone else. Well, no, how can you be better than anybody else when you're not like anybody else? We're unique as individuals. And so it was a wrong direction, but it stuck that, oh, okay, I can't even think that I might be good in my own private thoughts, never mind boldly put out there that, oh, I have a talent for this, or I'm really good at that, or I have this great characteristic or whatever. No, 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 you don't. You don't do that. So that sets like hard cement. and and so what's good about us often lurks in the shadows. It's as if there's this wonderful little person there that's saying, oh, you really are all that and more, way more. But it's such a quiet voice and it's a timid perspective that it's easy to not pay any attention to that until we do, until somebody challenges and says, okay, guess what? You are magnificent. No, I can't be. No, 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 no. I have this flaw, and this is what's wrong with me, and that I'm not good at, and blah, blah, blah. And we can go on and on at great length. Well, of course, that's only a small part of who we are. And maybe that's a darker side that we'd rather we didn't acknowledge, but we do. But what about the lighter side that needs acknowledging? What about the light in us that has just an automatic flow to the greatness that exists out there, all the creativity we could ever imagine, all of the wonderful things that humans have developed and thought about and imagined and then created. Well, there's a joy in that and a beauty of that that makes people's lives a whole lot better simply because they turned their attention to a talent or a skill or an idea that compelled them to move forward. So let me see if I can give you an example here. So I didn't think in school, we had a drawing class when I was in grade 7. And I didn't think I had any particular talent for drawing. And the teacher coming around viewing my work didn't stop at me and say, oh, you should be an artist. You have lots of talent. I never heard that. And so I guess my drawing was technically reasonable and it wasn't terrible, but I just never imagined that I had any talent for that. But then in my 40s, a friend who was an artist said, Sue, would you be interested in taking an art class? And I said, a painting class. And I said, well, yeah. But I said, do you have to know how to draw? And he says, no, no. Oh, okay. Well, I was curious. You know me, I love to learn. And so I embarked on this. I got a few friends together who also said, yeah, they'd be keen. And there was about half a dozen of us in this class, and our instructor called it art therapy. And I didn't exactly understand what he meant by that, but he knew what he was about. And so week by week, we picked up palette knives and a bunch of other tools, and we played with color, and he showed us the difference between light and shadow and what mixing colors looked like. And it was just a great deal of fun. And by the end of the 6 or 8 weeks that we were with him, he said to all of us, he said, every one of you in this room has the potential to be an artist who could sell your work. And what? This was unimaginable to me. Like I couldn't even imagine that was a possibility. But just him saying that, and frankly, I didn't really have any desire to move in that direction. But I did want to pursue this newfound passion I had for putting color on canvas. And so I dabbled and took more classes and kept it up and so on. And piece by piece, I discovered that not, well, maybe I gave myself credit for it. As I discovered that I could do better and better and better, and as my work improved, I realized, hey, I do have a talent for this. This is one of my talents. It had been lurking in the shadows for years until I brought it out to the light and played with it enough that I came to acknowledge, wow, that that's something I never knew that I had in me. So the same thing with singing. I I thought I had a reasonable singing voice, but at one point in my life when because I speak for a living, I wanted to safeguard my vocal cords. And so I took singing lessons mostly to learn how to use my voice so that it didn't wear out, so that I could have it at my fingertips and to access whenever I wanted to. So singing seemed to be a good way to do this. Well, I had this amazing instructor who just knew how to help me in that arena. Well, of course, she tended to teach these young people who were doing musical theater. Well, I was just doing it for my own reasons, but she wanted me to sing at the year-end recital. And I'm going, oh, no, 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 no. I'm just doing this for myself. But she kept she kept after me, and I thought, oh, well, okay. Singing on stage was not something I thought I would ever do, but I said, okay, it's a small group. I'll do my best. Well, I had some success with that, and people said, Sue, you have a lovely singing voice. And I'm really, and I hadn't taken that in because I always thought it was my older brother who had this great voice. So I didn't think that it was one of my talents and didn't grab hold of it. And it turns out it is. So so those are a couple of examples of me personally that of when you think of people who sing and people who play an instrument and or who paint or who write or whatever, well, where are you on that scale? Maybe there's more to you there than you ever thought. And if you ever had a desire to, oh, I wish I could play this kind of an instrument, or wow, I really admire somebody who can do this. Well, if you recognize that as a possibility for someone else, it's entirely possible that it's there for you. Now let me switch gears a little bit from away from the actual physical talents that we might turn our minds to and think about the character that we have inside ourselves that develops over time that again, I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for. So, fear is a big factor in everybody's life. We can be fearful about just about anything. And in last week's video, I talked about using fear as our compass to guide us to better and better things for ourselves. Well, this week, I want to talk about it in relation to giving ourselves credit for having moved through particularly difficult, challenging times in our lives. Could be right from the youngest age possible that we can even remember. So I can think of, for example, having a big battle when I was in I want to say about grade 7, somewhere around in there, with a school bus driver who did not allow eating on the bus. And I got caught eating on the bus. Not only did I get caught, but I lied about it to the bus driver because he didn't catch me. I got ratted out by one of the other students on the bus. And I knew that and I got into big trouble with him. Like he was not happy with me. And I didn't know what to do about this situation. I just agonized about it. And to the point where I couldn't sleep and I'm crying in the bathroom in the middle of the night. My mom comes in and what's wrong? And so I break down and I tell her this tale. And she asked me, she said, do you want me to step in here and do something about this on your behalf? No, no, Mom, I guess I got it. I guess I can figure it out. Well, I knew the first thing I needed to do was apologize to this person whom I did not like, and I felt very victimized by. But I got up my courage, and somehow, before as I boarded the bus the next morning, I ate crow, apologized to him, and then carried on. Well, that was one of my earlier remembrances of tackling something that I was very fearful of doing. I did not want to do that. The last thing I wanted to do was that. But I did it. And because I had, a small amount of success in that regard, I was able to build on that over time so that whenever I've had potential confrontations or important things that needed to be said, and I was just terrified of doing it, somehow I was able to kind of borrow on that little bit of courage that I had shown in that one place and transfer it over to each new situation. Well, it's a little bit like a muscle. The more you exercise that, the stronger it gets. So I'm not as fearful anymore about going face to face or head to head in a situation that I'm finding a, a real sense of vulnerability about. I'm not as concerned about that. And that's just everything to me. So but I don't know that I ever gave myself a whole lot of credit for that I was able to do that. So when you think about things in your life that you've been successful with, how often did you celebrate that? How often did you give yourself credit for that and say, wow, I did that, mark on the wall, wow, and then another one and another one and another one, because all of those things add up to instill in us how great we really are. As human beings, we need to celebrate all the goodness that there is in us. And if somebody else doesn't see it, at the very least, we need to see it in ourselves, because that's how not only can we move forward, but that's how we role model for others when we can acknowledge that. So just the level of compassion that you have for your own struggles through life. How often do we give ourselves that pat on the back for, hey, that was really tough and you got through it. That must have been really hard for you. And look at what you managed to accomplish. It's that kind of acknowledgement of ourselves to ourselves, about ourselves, that becomes really, really important in this whole game of living life and experimenting on a day-to-day basis. Then pretty soon more and more light shines into the shadow of us, and we begin to see, oh, that it's like they used to talk about letting your kid out to play. Well, that little kid wants to play, and the more we play, the happier we feel and the lighter we feel. It gives us an opportunity to fly. So, are you with me in this? You know you're magnificent enough to look at all of the bright spots that you are, all the light that you carry within you. Let it out, even if it's just little by little by little. And I think you'll find that your sense of yourself will start shifting into saying, wow, I am all that. And that's worth celebrating. So go be your magnificent selves this week. Look for more and more things that you can bring out of the shadow that are wonderful about you. And I'll see you next week.